The rain hadn't let up in 3 days, and the checkpoint at the edge of Hollis County looked like something out of a war zone instead of a stretch of Tennessee farmland. Eli Cross stood at the gate with his rifle slung and his jaw set, watching the water sheet off the brim of his cap. 3 days since the levee broke. 3 days since the National Guard had pulled back to handle the worst flooding downriver, leaving men like Eli, contracted, ex-military, paid to keep the peace, to hold the line around what was left of the relief supplies stacked inside the old grain depot behind him. He was 29 years old, and had spent 6 of those years as a Navy SEAL. He'd seen Ramadi. He'd seen the inside of a collapsed tunnel in Helmand Province with nothing but a headlamp and a knife. He told himself the gate of a flooded Tennessee depot shouldn't have made his hands tighten on the rifle strap the way it did. But people had been getting desperate. 2 nights ago, a man had tried to climb the fence with a kitchen knife, screaming about formula for his baby. Eli had talked him down, given him a case off the truck himself, and reported it to no one. But the higher-ups had gotten nervous, tightened the rules. Nothing leaves the depot without a chit. No exceptions. He was the one they trusted to make sure of that. So when the old man came shuffling up the gravel road just past 6 in the evening, soaked to the bone, pushing a wheelbarrow with a tarp over it, Eli's first instinct was procedure. "Evening," Eli said, stepping in front of the gate. "Depot's closed for civilian pickup till 0600 tomorrow. I can radio someone to. I'm not here for supplies, son." The old man's voice was gravel and smoke, the kind that came from 60 years of Tennessee summers and probably a few too many cigarettes. He had to be 80 if he was a day, his flannel shirt plastered to a frame that had once been broad but had gone narrow with age. "I'm here to drop something off. For the families." Eli glanced at the wheelbarrow. Whatever was under that tarp, it wasn't his call. "I appreciate that, sir, I do. But I can't take donations after hours either." "Same rule applies. You'll have to come back it, boy. I walked 4 miles in this." The old man's eyes, pale blue and rheumy, held Eli's without flinching. "My truck's been dead since the water got in the carburetor. I'm not walking it back." Eli felt the old, familiar tightness behind his sternum, the one that showed up whenever the mission and the moment didn't line up. He liked this job because the rules were supposed to make things simple. No judgment calls. No deciding who deserved an exception and who didn't. That kind of deciding had gotten people killed overseas, when units bent procedure for one sympathetic face and an ambush came through the gap they'd made. He reached for the gate latch anyway, already composing the apology in his head, already planning to load the man's wheelbarrow into his own truck and drive him home himself once his shift ended, rules or no rules. "Tell you what," Eli said. "Leave it with me. I'll see it gets logged in first thing. You're Daniel Cross's boy." Eli's hand stopped on the latch. The rain kept falling. Somewhere behind him, generators hummed against the dark, and a tarp on the supply pile snapped in the wind. But for a second, the whole checkpoint seemed to go quiet around those 4 words. "What did you say?" "Daniel Cross." The old man said it slower this time, like he was testing whether the name still had teeth after all these years. "Master Chief, if memory serves. Used to talk about a boy back home who wanted to swim before he could walk. Eli, he called him. Said the kid had his mother's stubbornness and his own bad knees." The old man's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "You got the knees. I can see it in how you're standing." Eli's father had been dead 11 years. A training accident off the coast of San Diego, 2 months before Eli left for boot camp himself, a fact the Navy had never quite explained to anyone's satisfaction. And a fact Eli had stopped asking about, because asking never brought anyone back. He hadn't heard a stranger say his father's name, unprompted, in longer than he could remember. People who'd known Daniel Cross either knew better than to bring him up around his son, or had drifted out of Eli's life along with the rest of that old world. "How do you know my father?" It wasn't really a question. It came out flat, almost like an accusation, because some part of Eli was already bracing for this to be a trick, some angle, some way to talk his way past the gate using a dead man's name as a crowbar. Served with him. Long before your time, before he was Master Chief of anything. The old man set the wheelbarrow down slow, joints cracking audibly even over the rain, and straightened up like the telling of it mattered more than the weather. Nam, 69, 70. I was Army, attached to a riverine unit working with some of you Navy boys down in the Delta. Your daddy pulled me out of water that was on fire, sun, diesel slick, burning on the surface. I went under, came up wrong, and there he was, hauling me out by the collar like I weighed nothing, burned half his forearm doing it. I expect you've seen that scar. Eli had seen that scar his whole childhood, a long, pale ridge along his father's left forearm that Daniel Cross had always brushed off with the same line. Training accident. Nothing exciting. Eli had believed it until the day he was 12 and asked too many follow-up questions, and his father had simply gone quiet and changed the subject, the way he did with most of the war. "Walter Pruitt," the old man said, and stuck out a hand that was missing the top joint of 2 fingers. "Your daddy and I wrote letters for about 10 years after we got back. Lost touch sometime in the 90s, the way men do. I heard he passed a while back. Didn't know he had family still around these parts till somebody mentioned a Cross was running security out here. Figured it couldn't hurt to ask." Eli stood there with the rain running down the back of his collar, his hands still on the latch, feeling something shift loose in his chest that had been locked down tight since the funeral. He looked at the wheelbarrow. "What's under the tarp, Mr. Pruitt?" "Canned goods. Blankets. A generator I rebuilt myself. Sits in the bed of a truck I can't drive right now. Wasn't gonna let 3 days of rain stop me from getting it to people who need it worse than I do." Walter Pruitt shrugged, like it was nothing. Like he hadn't just walked 4 miles at 80 years old through a flood to make good on something. "Your daddy used to say a debt you don't pay forward isn't really paid at all. I've been paying mine for 50 years. Didn't figure tonight should be any different." Eli unlatched the gate. He knew what the rules said. He knew what he was supposed to do. And he knew that somewhere up the chain there'd be a form to fill out, explaining why he'd made an exception on a night when exceptions were exactly what they were trying to stop. But he also knew, in the way a man knows a thing in his bones rather than his head, that his father would never have let this old man stand in the rain while a stack of paperwork decided who got to be kind and who didn't. "Come on in out of the wet," Eli said, and took hold of the wheelbarrow himself, his hand brushing past Walter's ruined fingers. "We'll get this log together, and then I'm driving you home myself." Generator and all. Walter Pruitt looked at him for a long moment, rain dripping off the brim of his cap, and something in the old man's face loosened too, like he'd been carrying more than canned goods on that long walk, like the weight of finally saying a dead friend's name out loud to the boy he'd left behind had been sitting on him the whole way. "Your daddy would be proud of the man standing this gate," Walter said quietly. "I mean that." Eli didn't trust his voice to answer right away. He just nodded, swung the gate wide, and for the first time in 3 days of rain and rules and rifles, let someone through who didn't have a chit. Because some debts aren't measured in paperwork, and some gates were never meant to stay closed to the people who taught you, even from the grave, what it means to hold the line for something worth holding it for.